On this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, guess what? My BMW has another leaky gasket. This time it's the valve cover, but no, I'm not gonna pay $1,800 to have the dealer do it. We're gonna do it today, and I'm gonna show you guys how. Stay tuned, valve cover, N55 engine. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. And as I said in the intro, there's another leaky gasket on my BMW. If you see my previous video where I did the oil filter housing gasket, that is now good, but unfortunately the valve cover, which is very common on these engines, is now leaking. I'll show you guys basically the symptoms I'm having. If you could maybe see all the way down in there, right by the O2 sensor on the downpipe, there is some oil that is dripping down, believed to be coming from the valve cover gasket. So basically it pulls up on the valve cover where there's like a little heat shield and runs down to the back. Obviously the downpipe gets super hot and it smokes, so that's rather embarrassing. I bought a gasket, and I'll put a link in the description below to where you can find one. I've seen a lot of these jobs on N54 engines, which is the older 335i, but I haven't seen any at all on YouTube for the F30 from start to finish. So that's what we're gonna do today. Let's dive in. Before you do anything, make sure you unplug your battery. Let's start first with the engine cover that you literally just pull up on. There's like 3 points that hold it down. Get that off so we can see what the hell is going on here. We're gonna have to remove quite a few things, but one of the first things that I think it makes sense to remove is this cowl here, because in order for us to get this valve cover off, we are going to have to remove the strut tower bar that runs back there. So let's remove this trim, and then these 6 10mm fasteners holding this cowl on, and then we can get to the strut tower. Let's get this trim out of the way. Now this strut tower right here is held in by, I believe, 4 fasteners, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just need to get yourself a screwdriver. I've already removed this one, but there's this little grommet here. Pop out, put that to the side. Now you have access to the E14 fasteners, and these are put on here pretty good, so just go ahead and loosen these up. All 4 of them, and then we'll be able to take out the strut bar. With the strut tower removed, we're kind of left with this little plastic cowl here. 3 or 4 bolts on each side. Remove those, and then we'll take it out. With that cowl and stuff all out of the way, I just removed that foam piece. That was just sitting on top, nothing to that. And then I wanted to get this out of the way because it's just draped over the engine. There's just a little lead held on by a 10mm nut that I removed from right here, just so I can get this guy out of the way. And now we have much better access to the valve cover, and we can get to all the details in here. Now there's a bunch of fiddly things to remove. The first thing I'm going to start with is, I believe this is for the PCV system. This runs to the intake. I saw this trick on the BMW forums, but basically this has like, you can't see on the bottom, but there's actually 4 clips all the way around, making this quite difficult to remove with just 2 hands. So I saw this trick, the guy was putting like just little washers on all of these clips, and then he was able to get it off. So I'm going to start with that. And then, you know, there's just more vacuum hose type stuff that needs to come off, so this needs to come off, and then we'll start to remove some of these electrical connections in the back. But first, let's get this off. The washer trick worked pretty good, but I did break off one of the tabs on this side, which
I'll have to try and figure out towards the end. I think it might be okay with the 3 remaining. They hold it on there pretty good with that O-ring, but just keep that in mind. Be careful when you're taking this one off. This vacuum hose just comes off by squeezing these together like this, and it just pops right off. There's another vent hose here that has these tiny external Torx fasteners on it, if you can see there. I don't have an external Torx in this tiny size, but this is just a 5mm regular socket, and I'm able to loosen these up. So take these 2 fasteners off and remove this vent. We're just gradually working our way back here on the engine. There's a little plug here. Try and do this so you guys can see. Push this metal tab, plug comes up. Get this out of the way. And then we can start unplugging these vacuum hoses. There's a vacuum hose that runs to this little vacuum body here that I'm just gonna get a pick and jam in here. So make sure you guys a little better. I'm just gonna get a pick and jam in here and get this vacuum hose out. That vacuum hose is off. There's a bit of wiring back here that needs to be removed. Just push down on this tab. This one is the same thing. Press down, push up. There we go. Get those harnesses off. I'm just trying to get this wiring out of the way here. This little clip gets undone with a screwdriver. Now we can get that aside. And this harness block, I'll call it, has a T30 Torx fastener, which I'm going to remove to get that out of the way. Now we can start removing some of these coils. They're kind of cool how they're designed. Get your finger in here and just pry up. You see this comes up, and it's sort of like integrated with the harness plug for the coil itself. You just keep pulling all the way and you see it pops that out. So pop that harness out, and then what you can do is actually just use this open spot here to pull up to get the coil out. So we got to remove all 6 of these. You might as well keep these in order while you pull them out. So I'm going to put them on the bench in order. Make sure you inspect them. And while I'm in here, since it's already kind of so involved to just get to this point, I'm gonna go ahead and replace the spark plugs as well. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get the spark plugs, since while you're here, you might as well. Next, we can remove these injector harnesses. And I'm just getting a flathead screwdriver in here, prying down on this tab. I'm gonna do this with pliers just because the camera is very much in the way, but you can do this by your hands easily. And then make sure you're pulling from the plug, there you go, and not the wires themselves, and you can get all these out. There's 6 of them, obviously. With the injector harnesses out, we can now take out these 3 grounding wires that are 8mm bolts. Now to get this whole harness out, get a T25 bit and remove these fasteners. There's one here and one over here. With this harness unbolted, we can get all these wires out of the way. I'm just going to tuck them over here so they're out of the way for when we finally remove the valve cover. Now there is this grounding cable that bolts here, runs here, and there's a bit of a plastic piece that it secures to on the back of the valve cover. I can definitely see that getting in the way, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove it. This is a 13mm nut that is holding this on. So I'm just gonna take this off here real quick. And then I had to remove one more T25 Torx fastener back here, but now I should be able to get this wire out of the way. There we go. So now I'll be able to get this out of the way. And we'll hopefully not get in my way when I'm pulling the valve cover off. These AC lines are a bit in the way up here, so I'm just gonna remove this with a 10mm socket, and then there's a T25 fastener behind that, and I'll be able to pull this bracket away. Now we're to the point where we need to crack the fuel lines loose. There's obviously going to be some fuel that comes out of these, and that's why I have a rag to try and catch most of that. I've also waited till like as long as I could. I basically got everything else free before doing this. Obviously we unplugged the battery terminal, so there should be a while ago, so there should be not much pressure in this line. There will be some. Preferably if you could unplug the battery the night before, there'll be even less pressure. But definitely make sure it's unplugged, because if you crack this line loose, it's gonna, it could potentially try and build more pressure and squirt fuel everywhere. So these are 14mm, and I'm just gonna run my rag under here. There it goes. Pressure is relieved. Squirted a little bit of fuel. Gonna let that bleed off. That's one side. Obviously we have to do all 6 of these. Fuel rail side, and then the actual cylinder side. I have all the fuel rails off, and I'll show you guys what I did. I only had a couple of these vacuum caps that I put over the fuel lines, or basically where the fuel goes on both sides here. You can see I'm really paranoid about crap getting in the fuel lines and clogging the injector. So vacuum caps, and then I ended up just using over here, because I didn't have enough vacuum caps, I just cut up my my work gloves. You can see I cut the fingers off, and I just put them over as caps, just in an effort to try and prevent any crap from getting in the fuel system. Now I think we're finally at the point where everything is off that needs to come off, except for obviously the fasteners holding the valve cover on. There's like roughly 25, 26 of them. I mean, they're all along the edges, and then as you can see, there's like 9 or 10 of them in the middle here. So I'm just gonna go around methodically. I don't really think it matters like where you loosen them from. It certainly matters how you tighten them, the order. But I'm gonna loosen them just in kind of like a spiral from around the center going outwards. And then after that, we should hopefully be able to pull the valve cover off. So let's take off all these fasteners. And by the way, these are E10 Torx fasteners on here, so you'll need an E10 socket. I'll put a link in the description if you need one. I think I have removed all the fasteners. This is the only way to tell, is to try and take it off. So I don't know how difficult it's going to be to break free from here. There's not a lot to pull off of, unfortunately. I'm just going to try and jam myself in here. I use my finger. I heard this side like crack loose. Now I basically messed with this valve cover for about 20 minutes. I wish I could tell you guys that there was a little trick that lets you get it off super easy, but there isn't. I didn't want to pry in anything for fear of breaking the plastic cover. The best I can say is be patient, start on one end and gradually start working your way down, prying with your fingers. It's going to suck, but you just have to get it done. This is not easy to get off, I will say that. A lot of crap in the way. Pulling the gaskets off. So close. Gasket is coming off as we speak. And there it is. Jeez. You can definitely see down in here where this thing was leaking. This is where the oil was pooling and running down this heat shield onto my downpipe. So now it's just a case of cleaning off these mating surfaces and reapplying our new gasket and putting it back on. Now we're on to when we can actually load the gaskets. Not rocket science here. There's just, for the N55, there's these 3 rectangular center ones for the spark plugs. Just line them up, then push them into the grooves. I'm gonna do all of these on the center, and then obviously do the big one on the outside. And then we can throw this thing finally back in the car. Well, now is the moment of truth, where we try and put the valve cover back in without pinching the gasket or anything, which should be interesting. There we go. Okay. Now let's kind of go around and do our best to see if we can make sure that we didn't pinch the gasket when we were setting it down. Very, very difficult to do. Yeah, fingers crossed we put it on right. I've gone around and I feel pretty comfortable that the gasket is seated pretty well. I'm gonna go around and just kind of start some of these bolts. I'm gonna start in the center and just kind of like spiral my way around, kind of center out, and hopefully we can get this on. Take several passes and tighten the bolts down gradually. All right, well, it's finally time for reassembly. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Just put it back in the reverse order that you took it out. I'm gonna start with the fuel lines and then just get going on the rest of this stuff. So start the time lapse. All right, guys, that's basically it. I'm to the point in the process where I can start the car. I've put everything essential back together. Obviously, I haven't put the strut tower or the cowl or stuff like that back on. And that's because I want to start it and make sure there are no leaks of any sort. No oil leaks, no fuel leaks. And then I'll button everything up. So definitely do that before you button everything up, just in case there is a problem. You don't have to take everything back out again. When you go ahead and start the car for the first time after this, it is going to stumble a little bit. That's because there's air in the fuel lines. No problem. Might even throw a check engine light. It should clear up on its own. Should be fine. So definitely do that. Appreciate you guys watching. This was a pain in the ass job. It took most of the day. Obviously, I was filming, and I didn't know what I was doing. So hopefully this helps you guys. It's a long job, but it should save you a lot of money. So definitely not for your entry-level mechanic. You kind of have to know what you're doing. You're dealing with some pretty important things. You definitely don't want to get dirt in the engine when it's exposed, stuff like that. So use common sense, you guys will be fine. Check out the links below if you need the valve cover gasket or any parts, tools that I used. I'll put them in the link, or I'll put them in the description below for you guys. If you want to see what I'm up to in between episodes, you can check me out on Instagram at Eat Sleep Drive TV. Otherwise, appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time.